Everyone, welcome to today's webcast, which is being broadcast live from DistribuTECH's exhibit floor. This is the first time we've had a live webcast from the exhibit floor, and we're really excited. We appreciate all of you here in the booth joining us, as well as our online audience. So, first of all, before we get started, I need to go over a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being brought to you by Power Grid International Magazine, and it is titled Electric Utility Report on Managing the Mobile Workforce Through Automation. Our presenters are Duncan Long from Clevist, who is filling in for Matthew Wells from Colorado Springs Utility. Matthew wasn't able to make it today, so Duncan will be doing his presentation. And then we also have Carol Johnston, who is the Vice President of Product Marketing for Clevist. And this webcast is being sponsored by Clevist. My name is Teresa Hansen. I'm the Chief Editor of Power Grid International Magazine, and I'm going to be your moderator today. So before we begin, like I said with the presentations, I need to review a few things with you. First of all, for those of you in the live audience, if you have your cell phones with you, which I'm sure most of you do, if you wouldn't mind silencing those, that would be great. It's already, there's a lot of activity and some noise, but would like to keep it down as much as we can. For those of you who are online, the presentation is live and interactive, as I'm sure you can tell. You can ask our presenters a question at any time by typing it into the Ask a Question feature, which is there. You'll see it on your screen. What we'll do is like I said, you can type your question in at any time, but we won't answer the questions until after the presentations are complete. But you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation to type it in. Once we get to the Q&A portion, I will look at the questions and read your questions out loud. And then for those of you in the audience, you also will have the opportunity to ask questions. What we'll do is you'll just raise your hand, and I will hand you a microphone, or someone will hand you a microphone. We need to make sure that everyone here does use the microphone when they ask their questions so that our online audience can hear what's going on. Let me see. Next page. For those of you online also, if you have any technical difficulties with the webcast, you can use the same Ask a Question feature, and someone from our webcast team or technical support team will answer you and hopefully can take care of your issues. If you're running pop-up blocking software, you need to disable it in order to view the webcast. Also, we recommend that you close out any applications that you might be using that you don't need to have open right now. It will definitely improve the webcast. The next announcement pertains to those attending in person and those of you online. A lot of times we get questions about people wanting to know if this presentation will be available, so I wanted to let you know that welcome. The presentation will be on the magazine website within 48 hours of today's live webcast. The website address is www.power-grid.com. Also, for all of you who are registered, and all of you who had your badges scanned, you will receive an email with the link to the archived webcast once it is on the homepage. In addition, a downloadable PDF of this presentation will be emailed to everyone who registered online and to everyone who had their badge scanned. So a lot of times we do get, they're telling me to look at the camera, a lot of times we do get requests for the PDF, so it is available. You just need to make sure that you have your badge scanned. So that's it for my housekeeping items. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's speakers. Although Matt, CSU's project manager, was unable to make it on short notice, Duncan Long will be stepping in to speak and present Matt's slides. Duncan has worked for Clevist now for 6 years on the project delivery team in various roles, from implementation specialist to project manager to most recently solution consultant. Duncan specializes in integrating systems with Clevist's enterprise mobility system. And then we have Carol Johnson. She is the Vice President of Product Marketing for Clevist. She has more than 15 years of product marketing and product management experience, working in the mobile workforce management and other related technology industries. Prior to Clevist, Carol was Vice President of Project and Strategy Partnerships for Bazinga, is that right? Mm-hmm. Bazinga Technologies, and she was Solution Manager for ABB Software, formerly Ventex, and Product Line Manager for Itron, managing their products and go-to-market strategies. So Duncan and Carol, I'll turn the program over to you, and I will rejoin you when we get ready for the Q&A portion. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Teresa, and welcome everybody, both in person and online. I have to confess that I did skip ahead, and I know how the survey turns out, but I'll try to keep the spoiler alerts to a minimum and share some information as we go along. One thing I did want to start out is by having an audio problem. So one thing I wanted to share was something I found very encouraging as we went through this survey and looked at the results, in that the conversation has really shifted away from, do we need mobile workforce management or technology in our workforces, to really a growing awareness and acceptance of the benefits and the value that automating your workers can achieve. I found it somewhat interesting, though, that when you engage and deal with utilities, quite often, though, there is some type of exciting event that has to happen in order for a utility to take action. And sometimes those exciting events can be extremely exciting, like a natural disaster or a major storm that goes through, or it can be something as simple as, customer service expectations growing, workloads, or even resource constraints that push a utility's ability to manage or sustain the level of customer service and work that they need to, that really, takes it to that next level where they decide to implement a system or some technology to help them deal with that workload. So, and next, before we get into the actual results of the survey, I did want to share a little bit of the landscape of the electric utility industry today. So most of you are probably familiar with this already, working and serving this industry. But there is this perception that the utilities are slow to move, or they're very staid in their operations. But we're really seeing a lot of dynamic and rapid changes over the last, frankly, decade that have started to come into play, either from the major events and storms that are coming through, regulatory pressures that are happening, but even something as simple as the customer service expectations in terms of the service that they're getting from their utility providers, and all of those communication requirements that comes with it as well. People expect immediacy, whether they're talking online through social media. People are now able to talk to their fridge, let alone speaking to their utility about outage or service issues they're experiencing. And that's all starting to put a lot of demand and expectations on the utility and how they manage their operations and their work crews today. So diving into the findings of the survey, we started to take a look. Some of this I didn't find surprising, where we do see that only 13% of utilities are still completely paper-based. So, speaking to that early findings that we were talking about, where a lot of utilities have embraced the value and the benefit from automation, we do see this reflected in these results. I was surprised, though, to see still such a high percentage of utilities that are using homegrown solutions, ones that they've developed internally using their own resources versus off-the-shelf solutions. And, there could be a lot of contributing factors to that, whether it's, they had the resources available, perceived benefits in terms of being able to get exactly the solution that they're looking for, and they can tailor those systems to match their work processes and business operations. But I think we're also starting to see a trend from vendors like Clevist and others, where there is a focus on highly configurable solutions that really allow a utility to map the software to their business operations versus vice versa. So I do expect over the years, as we continue to do these surveys and polls of the industry, to start seeing that homegrown solutions decrease in favor of off-the-shelf. When we start to take a look at the activities or areas in the utility that are being automated, again, not very surprising when we look at those exciting events or where the demands are being put on the utility, that these high business value and high impact, if you don't have efficiencies built into these work processes, are the ones that top this list. So everything from outage management to metering services, inspections and asset management, really the areas that touch on keeping the lights on, keeping the power flowing, are the areas that utilities have really focused on early adoption and early automation. I was surprised to see, less than 30% of the damage assessment area. You see that in the news a lot lately. A lot of people are asking about damage assessment solutions, yet this still isn't an area that really has those high rates of adoption in technology. And as well as AMI, I was surprised about this result as well. So 26% of utilities have deployed some type of AMI solution to automate their metering in the field, and also technology to help them maintain and manage that after the initial deployment. So I do expect these numbers to rise, but that's that level of reactive versus proactive type of implementation and automation that's happening, I believe. So diving into a little bit more, this can be a little bit misleading. So when we started off and we were talking about the fact that everybody knows about the benefits these days of automation, and then we look at a number like here where just 20% have fully automated, and like the devil in the details, fully is the key word here. So a lot of utilities, when they start automation, they may focus on the creation of the work order. Some are working on just the electronic completion of more of a point solution for meter services or meter exchange, but they haven't fully implemented the life cycle of that piece of paper. So they're still generating a piece of paper, somebody goes out and fills it out, and then they everybody awake? Excellent. I'm awake. Yeah.
Heart rate's up.
Very good. So fully is the key word there. So we see a mixed population of automation, and people haven't fully automated that entire process. 23%. So again, visibility into where your workers are located. So people have started to look at, I want to know where my work is, and I want to have a geospatial or geo view into my work orders and where they're located against my customers. But only 23% have a visibility into where your vehicles and your workers are. So when you're trying to marry up, my work and the people that actually perform that work, that's a critical component that I think utilities will start to look at more and more and want to have a unified solution that brings those two data elements or those two data points together so they have that full picture of what's going on in the field. And again, less than 30% have implemented AMI, which I still find surprising with all the stimulus funds and the focus on the smart grid and the smart cities. This is one of those foundational building blocks where you need that smart meter, bringing that information back into the utility, both for billing, but also for understanding where the outages are happening and being able to respond to that proactively again. And depending on where we took the sample size from, I know it was hundreds of utilities and respondents, so it could skew the data slightly, but we should be getting an indicative response here. And 23%, I expect that number to be quite a bit higher, especially in North America. So, industry study findings. So again, we see 59% have implemented some type of workforce management. And when we do see that reactive approach to it, a lot of times you don't get that holistic view of how you're going to implement and share the information, but also what departments or divisions you're automating. So we do see a nice healthy number here with 59% having some type of automation in place. But they're getting those mixed results. And I think when you do look at technology to solve a problem, it behooves the utility to take a look at what the end business goal or what the end benefit that they want to receive is, and then really map out a strategy to get there. And certainly Duncan will be speaking a little bit on the case study coming up, but really having a solution consultant or an implementation that acts a little bit like an independent resource to help you through that is very helpful. And some of those homegrown solutions that we talked about, they focus on the business processes or the electronic work order piece, but they don't really think about the integrations into all the various back-end systems, whether that's your CIS system, your OMS, your GIS, and all the different departments, whether it's your contractors, your supervisors, your dispatchers, that all need to see that information and be able to have access to the completion data that's coming back in from the field. And that's where sometimes an off-the-shelf solution that is already partnered and working with some of these other vendors can really help realize those full benefits. So we already talked about the not all divisions being automated, so you tend to see that little bit of a alert start or a hodgepodge deployment, and really looking at where your biggest bang for your buck is going to be, and making sure that you've got your high priority outage meter services. We saw that in the previous slide. Really as a focus of early automation. 60%. I found this surprising as well. So lots of learnings for me when we went through this study. In that 60% haven't automated their contractors yet. Yet we are seeing the growing trend towards utilities having contractors either as part of their workforce or taking over complete divisions of the utilities operations. So, when we look at that growing awareness of the benefits that you can extend by automating your own crews and your own workers, it's surprising to see the contractors left out of that automation or that technology approach. Devices, love this one. So, we're starting to see consumer-grade devices for some time now. This isn't a brand new trend, but we're starting to see a lot of consumer-grade devices, apps, some of that convenience and technology. There you go. And everybody has their preference, right? I'm an iPhone guy, gal. Duncan here is Android. We all come with our personal biases and what we're comfortable with in terms of technology and environments that we're familiar with to our workplaces now. And that can create quite a bit of a problem, not only for the vendors that are supplying that device agnostic, which tends to be sort of a buzzword that when you dig into it, what do you really mean by device agnostic? And utility IT departments that are having to support anything that comes their way, they start to push back on that a little bit as well. Also the cost of systems and vendors that are deploying systems on all these devices will also start to push back a little bit in that, tablet, well, define a tablet. It can be anything from an 11-inch to a 13-inch. We're starting to see phablet phones that are, larger and larger form factors. And when you're trying to create an environment that resolves itself to those different screen sizes, I think we're really starting to see a trend to more select your own device. So whether that's an Android operating system or an iPhone or a Windows, whatever environment that we're deploying on, and then pick your device, whether it's a consumer grade or a ruggedized type device. The utility is selecting, the best work to match with the workers' expectations, and vendors are moving forward to support that selection of device versus, we support anything that comes. And that really ties into that, aging systems and the IT support. So, we're used to have the luxury at a utility of this nice IT department that was on standby. They're now supporting homegrown systems, bring your own device technologies, failures in the field where you're doing mission critical work and having to get people up and running very quickly. And I think that's starting to drive as well the move towards either SaaS type solutions or IT managed services, where it takes a little bit of that pressure off of the utility's own IT department and pushes it on to the vendor, and more of a partnership approach as well. So here we have a little bit of the industry survey. So just looking across the landscape again, we see that, again, 85% of utilities that responded to this survey are considering either full or partial automation of their workforce. Yet when you ask them the next question around, what does that time frame look like, it was surprising to see that, over 60% are going to delay 1 to 2 years. And you dig into, why is that? So if we know the benefits of automation, we're seeing the return on that investment, and it's no longer a conversation of, if, but when. Why are they delaying those 1 to 2 years? And we start to see responses such as, concerns about integration. So that could be related to their past experience when they've got a homegrown system and trying to maintain integrations to all these various back-end systems that they're talking to and sharing data with. And then the vendor upgrades their system, and now you're having to upgrade your in-house developed solution as well. So it could be those concerns about adopting that pain as they move forward and how they're going to maintain and support it. It could be lack of support from local government as well. So, when you do one of these systems, it is a large project. You need both internal champions and stakeholders, but a lot of times you're getting the funding from your local government. And, how do you build that business case and really explain the benefits if you're not solid on it yourself? And that really is where you can actually go out and, get studies like this and survey that will help, build that business case for you and overcome some of these objections. The next is configuration difficulties. So, we used to see, especially in the electric utility, vendors that would come in with a highly customized solution, and then it was difficult to have that adapted without, a lot of overhead and cost associated with it. So, they do have that fear of the change request or the, cost of being able to tailor that system. So, how difficult is it to configure the system to map to your operations versus you having to adapt to the system? And the next is the perception of high cost. So, these systems are, as I said, integrated to a number of back-end systems. So there's system, integration and professional services cost over and above the license cost itself. So there can be that exception or that perception that, I'm going to be, investing a lot of money in this system, and then how do I maintain it? So let's look at the flip side of that coin, though, and then start looking at, if we know the benefits, we know what the objections are or the reasons for not automating. What are the consequences, though, of not automating? And this is the heart of your business case. So we have those inefficiencies that we already talked about. If you don't know, where your workers are located, you're dealing with manual or paper work order types, and all the data entry errors and the delays in doing your customer service and getting that real-time conversation going with your customers. What does that actually cost the utility in terms of hard dollars? So that's certainly something that we encourage everyone to look at as the other side of the business case. It's not just a cost, but it's a benefit as well. And this is just a snapshot view showing those reasons for not automating broken down by percentage. So, we see 41% still having that perception that it is just too expensive to automate your workforce and your crews. And then, layered again against that government support, difficult to configure. But again, see how low the, not understanding the benefits. So we understand what the benefits are, but being able to articulate those in terms of cost of not automating and the benefit of automating and putting it into a business case seems to be the main roadblock here that I see out of this survey result. So top reasons for automating. So when surveyed, operational efficiency, 96%. So we're asking the question of why aren't you automating, and they're giving us their own response here, which is really building the business case here in black and white, which, reducing their costs, 86%, operational efficiency, which we already talked about. All of the numbers around ease of use and worker safety, ranking out this survey. And it really paints the picture of, why wouldn't you at this point, with all of these great reasons to automate. Preferred implementation methods. So we talked a little bit about the buzzwords of bring your own device and what that means in terms of practical application. SaaS is another one that is starting to be top of mind with a lot of utilities and their CIOs of what is the deployment or the preferred method. And a lot of them will say that they have a SaaS first methodology, but we're still seeing 60% preferring a on-prem or on-premise location or deployment. But they're starting to look at either private cloud, where you're on a single box managed by the vendor, where you don't have the IT support and upgrade costs buried into the cost of maintaining that system for you, where they've got that private cloud. But 20% are now considering, a full-on SaaS-type solution where it's a multi-tenanted, shared environment in a hosted cloud access for that system. And we do expect these numbers to rise. So, as people get more comfortable with either location solutions or point solutions like meter exchange, where, you don't necessarily have all the back-end integrations and system support to deal with, that this makes a very attractive, low-cost solution to run out a system like this. And our contractors back, so automating those contractors. So, 54% of the utilities that were surveyed say that they have contractors either fully working on a certain division that they've automated, or they're a mixed population with their own crews and their contractors in areas that they've automated. Yet they're not bringing those contractors into the technology or the platform or device that they're providing to their own workers. And when asked, they cite reasons such as security. So do I want a contractor having access potentially to my back-end systems? or the services that they're currently performing with contractors aren't part of their automation strategy, or they're not directly involved in the operations of the utility. But we start to see that the same benefits that you would get from automating your own work and workers, you can extend to contractors and get that same return on investment, because contractors aren't free and they're not cheap. So device strategies. So this ties into that theme of, bring your own device. So, what devices are utilities selecting these days? And it's interesting to see a fairly even split along, laptops versus tablets and smartphones. And I think utilities are listening to their workers and picking a device that meets, what type of work they're doing in the field. And whether that's, having something in the palm of your hand or something that you're cradling in your lap, it really is becoming that demand to have a scalable solution that will run on a bunch of different platforms that the utilities can then pick from, and then allow utilities to select the device of choice in order to do the work. 52%, and that goes back to bring your own device versus get your own device, will still purchase and provide the hardware. We're kind of creatures of acquisition and ownership, and things that we own, we look after and we care about, and we tend to protect them. So by following a strategy like this, utilities are getting the benefit of reduction in loss and damage, but by still having a little bit of IT control over what's being deployed in their environment. 18% is bring your own device still, and I think we do see that a little bit more in the contractor world, where you don't have as much control or desire to buy a piece of hardware and give it to someone that doesn't work for you. So they do want to be able to have those contractors provide their own hardware. And 30% are a combination mishmash of devices and strategy. So recipe for inefficiencies. So, not automating, whether it's your contractors, your own crews, you're really injecting those delays and responding to emergencies, customer service requests. That's where all the regulatory pressures and fines and all these other things are starting to come into play and impact the utility in a very measurable and tangible way. Work order backlogs continue to mount, so the more we do, the more work we get handed to us. So that's certainly an area where if you're not automating that, how are you able to maintain the customer service levels and the type of work that you're doing, especially if you want to reduce your costs with having less workers overall. Field workers wasting time, so picking up pieces of paper, figuring out where you're going next, filling out that paper, handing it in at the end of the day, and then you have to hire someone to transcribe and interpret somebody's hieroglyphics that they put down on a piece of paper and put it into the back-end system. And at that point, I am going to hand it over now to my colleague and friend, Duncan Long, and he is going to walk us through a case study for Colorado Springs and see some of their results they came in with.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, Colorado Springs, just to give you a bit of background on the utility, they've got a mix, gas, water, and electric, almost 200,000 in each, and over 1,700 employees, which is a fair bit. This is one of those interesting events. So in 2012, the Waldo Canyon fire hit. And this is what really was the instigator to get them to realize that they need to automate and better automate their systems. So this is actually a picture of their crews. During that, they had to work with firefighters. They had to work with everyone. And one of the main things here is that their electric side was bad enough. I mean, fires, those poles light up with all the creosote and everything. However, the gas side is literally explosive. So they had a lot of work ahead of them. This particular fire was pretty extraordinary, 65-mile-per-hour winds, mandatory evacuations. And we've actually got some numbers on that. So they evacuated 32,000 of them, and they had over 300 homes destroyed. Now, you won't be able to see this very well, but on the graphic on the right, all the blue were the homes that were actually destroyed during this fire. So pretty devastating event. Matt Wells, who's the one who put this together, also mentioned they had 9.3 million gallons of water that they used to fight this fire. So as part of this, I already mentioned that the gas was more affected than electric. They actually had to divert crews anyone qualified to shutting off. And at the end of it, they had done leak surveys on 4,200, I guess, service lines. And then they ended up with over 4,000 relights that they had to do the following week to get everyone back going. So this set up a number of lessons learned. It highlighted their need to be able to figure out where their crews are, how able to communicate with them. They needed better integration with their back office systems because they were having various reports coming back from the crews and weren't able to sync that up with their back office systems in a synchronized way so that they actually knew what was going on from a big picture perspective. And they needed just automation for their manual processes because they still had a number of them sitting around, and it was really costing them time and making situations dangerous. So the business challenges here are pretty much the flip side of that. So there's multiple disparate mobile systems that they had. So this is out in the field. They had different mobile apps that they were having to work on. And not only that, their gas, for example, didn't even have a mobile solution out in the field. So they were pure paper for that one. Their internal communications, as I mentioned, one of the lessons learned was that they just weren't communicating well enough to respond the way they wanted to respond to this event. Their GIS maps were actually paper-based, so they would print them out before going out into the field. And limited connectivity. So this is a big one, actually. So 80% of their area has actually no connectivity. So yeah, that was a big deal for them. So to solve these business challenges, they really needed to come up with some requirements about what did they actually need. And this is what we're stepping through here. So they needed a mobile system, and they needed it to actually consolidate everything onto a single platform. Okay, they didn't want to keep having to change between systems. They also needed that mobile platform to integrate well with their back office system. So everything from outage management to their customer information and their asset management. They also wanted to just improve that process. So getting e-tours out there so that end customers actually know when they're going to be restored and get that level of comfort that they're being responded to, that stuff is being looked at, rather than them sitting at the other end of the line just wondering, hey, is anyone ever going to come, fix me? So they also had this device agnostic piece that was important to them. And as Carol mentioned, actually that ability to say, okay, what platform do you want to go on and what form factor, so that their crews could actually work on something that they're used to. User interface is important when you're trying to get adoption of systems, right? They also wanted to integrate in the mobile GIS and AVL pieces into their actual ticketing system so that when a worker's out in the field, they can actually see the relevant information. They don't need to be carrying paper-based maps with them. And again, the connectivity. With 80% of their area down, they really needed a mobile solution that would be seamless between that online and offline. So that when you're offline, you're still able to capture data, do particular safety requirements, and get that all back into the system. And they wanted to build for the future. So as Carol mentioned, even with companies that are automated, they're not fully automated. And they wanted a system whereby they could actually start and grow into those automated bits. So it needed to be configurable, as she mentioned, and scalable so that they could actually branch out across departments. So they were able to do this project and got some key results, which we'll highlight. So they were able to get that single mobile platform with Clevis, which is great. It has the mobile GIS and AVL all within there. You can see the maps, and we can show you some of that later. And this second point is actually a really interesting one. It's actually what I've been doing for the last 6 years, where we actually do the workflows and we configure them to their business processes. So at the beginning of this project, actually a solution consultant went on site for a couple of weeks and really mapped out their business processes. And this is one of the value adds that we provide from a consulting perspective, to actually say, okay, these are your current business processes. This is where automation is going to help you. And this is where actually just standard best practices can help you as well. So there's that consulting piece, which really gets gets them comfortable with the solution that they're getting, and also helps their users in user adoption. So they were able to simplify the coordination of field operations. Visualization was another big piece, making sure they knew where their crews were and what they were doing. Reshuffling of work was really important. One of the things that I'm not sure is on this slide, but I think it's on the next one, is contractors. That was really important to them to be able to pass that information to them. And that's something that they're going to be doing in the next phase. They also wanted this reprediction and roll-up of outage incidents sent back to their OMS. So they were GE Power On is their OMS, and we integrated with them through BizTalk using the multi-speak interface. And we were able to, out in the field, actually capture outage information and pass it back up to Power On so that they could actually do those roll-ups of outages, which is important when you get an outage reported in one area and you go there and realize, oh, nope, it's way up the line and it's actually affecting hundreds of customers. Yeah. So integrated mobile GIS, enterprise mobile GIS is one of our focuses, and it eliminates that whole paper-based process. This is actually a repeat. The only thing that's not a repeat here is the single sign-on credentials. So that was important to them, actually doing Active Directory sign-on. So, yep. OK, so this is from Matt Wells again. So these are his numbers. But he had mentioned that with CFSU, this actually reduced their overall cost savings, which equated to billions per year. So very, very happy feedback, which is great to know that automation in this area can really save utilities a lot of time and money. And compared to the cost of automating, the business proposition was mind-blowing for them. So future plans that they've got, they're currently doing some CCB Oracle integration as well for some service orders. They want to build that out and do a number of other service orders. So they want to do that with their customer service department, vegetation management, street light operations and inspections, and visualization across departments. So this is something where, again, they wanted something that they could build off of and go across departments very easily. And that really applies to contractors as well. So with contractors, you have some of the same issues as you do with different departments, right? Some departments, totally fine for them to see information changing hands. Other departments, you really don't want that information passing back and forth. So this ability to use one system to actually allow contractors to come in and have that security where they're not able to see things that they're not allowed to. The same thing applies with interdepartmental stuff. So, and then you have super users who have that ability to see the big picture and see the dashboarding and all that kind of stuff that comes with that business intelligence. So,
wonderful.
Back to you.
Wonderful. So thank you, Duncan. That was very informative. I really like this case study because I think it highlights a couple of important facts. We saw a utility that had one of those, as I call it, exciting events, and as Duncan was saying, when houses are blowing up and gas is igniting, that gets pretty hairy pretty quick, and you've got now to coordinate with first responders and fire and police and your customers as well that are going through, you know, a life-altering event, and that heightens the anxiety and the feedback that you're getting from your customers in real time. The other thing I found fascinating about this case study, though, was that this was a utility that was an energy utility. It had a gas and electric department and sides to its operations. But it also had a mixed bag of automation in place. So they had multiple mobility solutions. They had various levels of integration and data sharing across the organization. So even that they were marching down the path of automation, an event like this really highlighted where they were maybe having not as much return on that investment as they could have had. And moving to a unified mobility platform was the direction they wanted to go into, and really bringing their contractors into that portfolio. So you can see where everybody's located, especially in an emergency situation like this. You want to know where your workers are located, who's available to help out, and where your hotspots or trouble areas are located at. So thank you very much. That was fascinating. So I'm sorry, just going through here. So I just want to take you to sort of wrap up, taking a little bit of a look at the ROI. So we were talking about, how you build that business case, and we saw a live case study. We saw some of the survey results. How did Matt come up with that $1 million year savings and justify the system? So we'll take a little look through on the industry data. So this is coming from industry analysts and other surveys that we've done. So it's not Clevis data or Colorado Springs or a particular utilities data, but looking across the industry as a whole and how these ROIs are generated. So on automation, so we already saw that through this survey and all the way through our talk here that mobile workforce management is now literally a no-brainer. It is easy to justify. The benefits are quick and easy to return literally within the first year of implementation. So that perception of high cost versus benefit is disappearing. The cloud-based delivery options are further driving down the cost of these solutions, so you can reduce your IT and your deployment and your time to deployment options. The new mobile form factors and consumer-grade devices give that option of reducing the hardware costs as well, and also improving the time to change. So, getting employees to buy in because it's a device they're already familiar with, reducing your training time and your deployment time on that up front as well. And really transforming how work gets done. So, we expect real-time connectivity and communications these days. Extending that out to your field workers is just a logical next step. Some of the other, impacts of technology consumerism. So we already see that, it's a smartphone, it's an iPhone, it's a phablet, it's a laptop. App stores are making a big presence here as well, where workers can literally download and go and become, part of your workforce, whether it's contractors you're bringing in or, the administrative pool that you want to put out into the field in terms of damage assessment or some of these crisis events. The App Store makes the technology and the systems and the software really at your fingertips. New, younger employees, we always hear about the aging workforce. Well, that's all of us. We're all aging every day as we enter the workforce. It's really just the change, though. And I think, as we go through our careers, we become more expert in certain areas. And when things shift under our feet, there's some continuous lifelong learners, and there's those resistant to change. But we are seeing, these younger people coming in. They've grown up with the tablets and the technology. I remember when I went through school, I wasn't even allowed to use a calculator. You had to do all the calculations by hand in the math class. Well, now everybody's got a smart calculator, a smartphone, a smart device. We're not really expecting not to have technology improving our lives and available at our fingertips anymore. And they're really driving this expectation that you want me to go out in the field and not have communications with the back office and work on a piece of paper? No way. It's a non-starter for the next generation. So utilities have to respond to that. So, they want to recruit new employees. They want to retain them. They have to provide these technology and the tools both to serve their customers better, but also to empower and recruit new employees. Industry data on automation. So, literally the smartphone sitting in Duncan's hand there has more computing power than if some of you have been around as long as I have, the 386 towers that we used to have under our desks at the time. You really have the power of a full-size computer in the palm of your hand these days. And it's really driving that expectation that what more and more information and systems and technology can I put into that device. And we're starting to see a real drive to have GIS systems embedded or integrated with your mobile workforce. So I don't want to just see my work orders and be able to complete those. I want to be able to see my GIS information, my customer information. I want to be able to query to a back-end system and see what last maintenance was performed on a particular asset. Update the GIS with GPS coordinates that are captured in the field. So maybe we thought our meter, our pole was 3 feet to the left, but it's actually 5 feet to the right. Being able to capture that information and integrate it into the GIS is becoming part of the norm. And routing, of course. So I always skip over the routing. We all have these smartphones, and you've got Google Maps that will pop up and give you driving directions. It's really expected that you have that same type of capability when you've got a mobile worker. Tell them where his next work order or his next location is just an expected type of functionality or experience that we're seeing on these mobile devices in the field. Average ROI, so this is where that comes from. So this is done and captured over proven results over multiple surveys, multiple case studies with multiple different types of utilities, both electric, gas, water, wastewater, city, and these are the results, the proven results they're starting to see from deploying one of these systems and why they're getting that return on that investment in the first year of deployment. So 62% improvement in the workforce productivity. So that's pretty much justifies the system right there in the cost of manpower and what have you that you're running. 42% increase in customer satisfaction. So, you know, we're all in the service industry and the service business. We all have some type of master out there, and making sure that your customers are happy really drives down the cost, both in terms of them calling you to complain and you having to respond to that regulatory pressure as to why you're not being responsive to your customers. Is a justification in and of itself. Improved arrivals, 50%. So that's all your appointment bookings. So it's no longer acceptable to say we'll be there, you know, Monday and expect your customer to sit home all day. You're having to narrow smaller and smaller appointment windows from, you know, 4 hours to 2 hours or whatever your customer service level agreements are, but really being able to hit that number. It doesn't matter if it's a 4-hour window, but if you're 5 hours, you're going to hear about that. So you really want to make sure that you're hitting those on-time arrivals, and the automation can really help with that. Reduction in overtime, 60%, travel time, 15%. Fuel consumption. So, you know, these are green energy, green technologies. By minimizing the drive time and what have you, they're realizing 50% cost savings in the fuel that they're having to purchase and burn throughout a day or a shift. So in summary, I really, you know, think, and I see the survey results reflecting that it's no longer a question of do I automate or when I automate, what is the benefits of automating. It's really now become a, you know, you must automate. There is a growing awareness, a growing demand, a growing expectation that technology is going to help us better serve both our customers and be more efficient in the utility operations. And really, you know, waiting for that emergency to force your hand, or sustainability and manageability of your workforce forcing your hand, taking a more proactive look and making sure you're getting the benefits of a well-planned project is the way to go. Thank you very much. And we'll take some questions at this point.
All right. Thank you, Duncan and Carol. What we're going to do, like I said, we're getting ready to go into the Q&A portion. We have some online questions that have already come in, but for those of you in our online audience, feel free to go ahead and enter your question now if you haven't already done so. For those of you here in the booth, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the presenters, just let me know and I'll hand you the microphone. We just need to make sure that you do ask your question through the microphone so that our online audience can hear. So does anybody here in the live audience have a question they want to ask? Not yet? Okay. In that case, I'm going to move on to our online questions. So the first question says, is the software installed at the utility or is it cloud-based?
Well, I think we'll let Duncan, our implementation specialist, take that one.
Sure. So this one is on-premise. So CSU is installed on their premise. But yeah, we offer both. So.
Okay. Okay. So will it work when the field tech is out of coverage?
Yes.
Offline?
Okay. So this is an important one, which I touched on a little bit. But because 80% of their area was actually offline, with our application, that was one of their key things, right? So our application, obviously, you can't actually send a message while you're offline because there's no connectivity to do that. However, all of the data capture, pictures, looking at your Esri or GIS information is all available. So we have it to where it'll sync GIS and retain it offline. Your work orders are all there, and you can actually enter in that data. And you can even have field-based validations, which is really important was important for CSU, and it's important for most of our customers, so that you get that integrity in the data that's being captured, whether or not you're connected to the back-end system. So, yeah.
All right, great. The next one, it says, what types of devices and operating systems can the software operate on?
That's a big question. So,
It is.
do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can
Quite a
stumble
few.
my way through
I
that.
can
Yeah.
as well.
So that really speaks to that, expectation or the request for device agnosticity. And, vendors like Clevist, we take a look at all of the different operating systems or platforms out there and the various devices. Some we productize and some we support through project-level engagements if a customer has a particular device they want. So I think you're starting to see more options and more selection of devices out there, whether it's iOS, Android, Windows. We support all of them, as well as the different form factors, whether it's smartphone, a tablet, or a full-on laptop, ruggedized, consumer grade. It really is a smorgasbord of devices out there today.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I've actually been on projects where we've deployed everything from Microsoft Surface to Panasonic Toughbooks to iPhones, so all over the map.
Big variety then. All right. The next question, does the software interface with my back office systems like billing, asset management, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'll definitely take that one. So I actually specialize in integrations with our deployments, and we've done integrations from everything from Oracle CCB to Maximo. The list goes on. Our Esri GIS, as I mentioned earlier, NISC, SEDC, we've done a ton of that. And a lot of that speaks to the power of our configurability tool, Genesis, which is able to actually do a lot of that configuration for those interfaces. So you're not actually having to go back to developers to actually do a lot of this data exchange from our side. So yeah, it's a big part of our solution.
Okay. Well, I know that obviously integration of systems is a big issue right now. So.
Yeah.
Okay, this one, it says, what is Colorado Springs planning to do next with their mobile workforce software?
Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit. They want to expand a lot of their orders within the CCB integration. So they have a couple service orders that they're doing already. They want to expand that. They want to add vegetation. And there was a list on the slide which you can look at in the deck later. But then another big piece of that is actually automating their contractors to get that completely done. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, well, then I guess we'll wrap it up. On behalf of Power Grid International, DistribuTECH, and Penwell, I would like to thank today's presenters, Duncan Long and Carol Johnston. Thank you very much. And would also like to thank Clevis for sponsoring this, our first on the exhibit floor webcast ever. So we're glad that you guys were willing to do that for us, and we hope that you guys online enjoyed it and that those of you here in the audience did as well. The presentation, Electric Utility Report on Managing the Mobile Workforce Through Automation, will be archived within 48 hours. So for those of you who registered online or had your badge scan when you came into the booth, you will receive an email that will have the link to the archive webcast. It will also be on the Power Grid International website, www.power-grid.com. It will be on there within the next 48 hours. So if you want to recommend it to your coworkers or someone like that that hasn't registered for it, they can do that. It'll be there for 6 months. So it's available for the next 6 months. Also, for those of you, like I said, who had your badge scan or online, you will receive a PDF of today's webcast. I know that's often a question we get. You should see an email coming from Clevist, and it will include the PDF of today's presentation. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone who was involved, and I definitely want to thank those of you online and here in our live audience who took the time out of your busy schedules to join us. I hope to host you for another webcast very soon. Everybody have a great day.
Wonderful. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.